Um, Imagine for a second an ingredient so absolutely vital to your survival that without it, your heart simply couldn't beat.
Yeah, it just wouldn't work at all.
Right, like your muscles would freeze in place, unable to move, and your brain couldn't even develop properly in the first place.
Crazy to think about.
It is. You would think a nutrient with that kind of resume would be, I don't know, the very first thing we learn about in grade school health class, like right at the top of the food pyramid.
Oh, for sure. You'd expect it to be front and center.
Exactly. Yet, incredibly, this single astonishing nutrient was completely missing from the National Academy of Sciences list of required human vitamins until 1998.
1998.
Yeah.
Which is just, I mean, it's a mind-bending historical blind spot.
It really is. So today, for you listening, we are going on a deep dive. We are exploring a massive stack of medical research and nutritional guidelines centered on one of the most misunderstood and honestly powerful biological drivers in the human body, choline.
Yeah, choline. And we're going to decode exactly what it is, why the scientific consensus suddenly shifted in the late 90s to actually mandate it in our diets, and what the latest global research reveals about its power.
Right, because it's a huge deal now.
Totally. Scientists are now tracking how this single nutrient can fend off everything from memory loss and cognitive decline to, like, severe chronic diseases, even cancer.
Wow.
Yeah. But to understand why it's suddenly at the forefront of all this longevity research, we really have to look at the mechanics of what it actually does when it enters your system.
Okay, let's unpack this because going from, completely off the radar to absolutely mandated for human survival in 1998, that is a pretty wild jump.
It's a massive pivot.
Right. There must have been some fundamental flaw in how we understood human biology before that point.
Well, there was. Prior to 1998, the scientific consensus was that the human body actually produced enough choline on its own, like internally.
And they thought we just made it ourselves.
Exactly. We knew it was in the body, but the assumption was that our internal manufacturing process was entirely sufficient to sustain all our biological needs.
Huh. But they were wrong.
Dead wrong. Research finally proved that internal production can really only cover a fraction of what our cells demand.
So we have to get it from outside.
Yes. It must come from outside sources, meaning your diet or supplements, and it is completely non-negotiable.
Why is it so non-negotiable?
Because this water-soluble nutrient creates something called phosphatidylcholine.
Okay, phosphatidylcholine.
Right, which is the structural building block for the membrane of every single living cell in your body.
Wow. So it's literally the physical walls of our microscopic architecture.
Exactly. Without it, the cells just lose their integrity.
And the sources point out it also drives a biological process called methylation.
Yes, methylation is huge.
Right. And to put that in perspective for you listening, methylation isn't about creating new DNA out of thin air. It's actually the epigenetic software that tells your DNA hardware how to behave.
That's a great way to put it.
Thanks. It's the mechanism that turns certain genes on and off.
Okay.
But the place where choline gets incredibly immediate, where you can actually feel it working right now as you listen to this, is its role in creating a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine.
Yeah, acetylcholine is basically the messenger system.
All right.
Without it, the signal from your nervous system never reaches your muscle tissue. Your gastrointestinal tract literally cannot push food through the digestive system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Your diaphragm can't even contract to pull air into your lungs.
So I picture acetylcholine as the biological spark plug.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how much gas you have in the tank or how flawless the engine block is. If you don't have that spark plug firing, if you don't have choline creating that specific neurotransmitter, the engine simply does not turn over.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you can really think of choline as the biological infrastructure of human movement and cellular life.
Right.
It is the signaling mechanism that tells your physical body to execute the commands of your brain. It supports your energy levels, helps maintain a healthy metabolism, and just keeps your entire nervous system online.
But wait, if this nutrient is literally responsible for making our hearts beat, and it's the infrastructure of human movement, how on earth did the scientific community only realize we needed to eat it in 1998?
It's a fair question.
Right. Did we just accidentally get enough of it before?
Yeah.
We couldn't have just been deficient for thousands of years without noticing.
Well, for most of human history, traditional diets naturally contained enough choline-rich foods to keep us functioning.
So we were just lucky.
Pretty much. We were meeting the threshold by accident. But as diets shifted heavily toward highly processed foods in the latter half of the 20th century, we started seeing the physiological cracks.
the modern diet strikes again.
Exactly. The natural intake dropped, the internal production couldn't keep up, and scientists finally had to look closely at what was missing from the equation.
That is wild. I mean, every single time you blink, every time you take a breath while listening to this deep dive, you are actively burning through choline.
You really are.
Which begs the question, if our modern diets shifted away from it, where are we actually supposed to be getting it?
Great question. The big hitters are things like shrimp, beef liver, scallops, and especially egg yolks.
Okay, but what if you don't eat those? Like, if vegetarians and vegans aren't eating traditional, highly concentrated animal sources, they must be getting it from somewhere else, right? Otherwise, we'd be seeing massive, catastrophic deficiencies in plant-based populations.
Oh, plant sources absolutely exist. The concentrations are different, but you can find it in collard greens, Brussels sprouts, quinoa, and soy products.
Love it, Quinoa.
But there is actually a stealth source of choline hiding in our food supply that acts as like an accidental chemical safety net for the general population.
A stealth source, what is it?
It's an ingredient called soy lecithin.
Oh, soy lecithin.
Hmm.
That is on the back of practically every wrapped granola bar or packaged food in the grocery store.
It's an emulsifier, right?
Yeah, exactly. It is widely used to keep oil and water-soluble ingredients from separating on the shelf.
Wow.
And because soy lecithin is so ubiquitous in processed foods, millions of people who rarely eat eggs or leafy greens are absorbing incidental choline without ever realizing it.
That is such a fascinating irony. The very processed foods that moved us away from traditional choline sources now contain an additive that provides like a baseline trickle of it.
Yeah, it's pretty ironic.
So what does this all mean for our daily intake? Because the Food and Nutrition Board established guidelines back in 1998, and they put most adults on a dust line of around half a gram a day, right?
Yeah, roughly. To be specific, adult men over 14 and lactating women need the most, hovering around 550 milligrams a day.
Okay.
Pregnant women need about 450 milligrams. And most other adult females need 425 milligrams.
And babies.
It scales all the way down to about 125 milligrams for infants. Got it. But hitting that target isn't just about what you chew and swallow. The research highlights a pretty massive absorption problem, doesn't it?
It does. You can be eating the perfect amount of choline on paper and still be severely deficient in your bloodstream
Why is that?
because of how your body processes it. People who consume excessive amounts of alcohol, individuals with type 2 diabetes, or those who are obese, are at a severely increased risk for deficiency because their metabolic systems are compromised.
Especially the liver, right?
Exactly. The liver is the primary hub for choline metabolism. If the liver is inflamed or packed with triglyceride fat, like in fatty liver disease, it just cannot process the choline you feed it.
The mechanics of that liver relationship are so fascinating. Like, to visualize this for you listening, imagine your liver is a massive shipping warehouse, and dietary fat is the inventory constantly being dropped off.
Right.
Choline is the raw material your body uses to build the delivery trucks.
Yeah.
Specifically, these things called very low-density lipoproteins. And those trucks transport that fat out of the warehouse and distribute it to the rest of the body.
That's spot on.
But if you don't have enough choline, you can't build the delivery trucks. So the fat just piles up inside the liver, causing non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
And that accumulation leads to systemic metabolic breakdown. The symptoms of that deficiency cascade outward. You start seeing nerve damage, learning problems, cognitive decline, severe mood changes, and just generally low energy.
Because the warehouse gets clogged
Yeah.
and the whole supply chain halts.
Exactly.
But on the flip side, it feels like we're Goldilocks here. Too little and you get brain fog, but you can't just panic, buy a giant tub of choline powder and start scooping it into your smoothies.
Oh, absolutely do not do that.
Right, because there's a strict upper toxicity limit of 3.5 grams per day for adults. And the toxicity symptoms are bizarrely specific. You get blood pressure swings, diarrhea, and a very distinct, intense, fishy odor of the skin.
Yeah, you literally sweat a fishy smell. It's wild.
How does a normal person manage this without carrying a calculator to breakfast? Too much, and you smell like fish.
Well, reaching that 3.5 gram upper limit purely through whole foods is exceedingly difficult.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, you would have to eat an unreasonable amount of beef liver every single day. Toxicity almost always occurs through massive oversupplementation.
Oh, okay.
If you just maintain a varied diet, your body is remarkably good at regulating the absorption and keeping you safely in the middle of that spectrum.
Okay, phew. That biological tightrope makes sense for our organs, but the way choline manages the physical warehouse of the body is just the baseline. Where the source material gets truly wild is when we look at the brain.
Oh, the brain data is incredible.
Right, because this nutrient's influence starts before you are even born and dictates how your brain holds up decades later.
Yeah, the developmental research elevates choline from just a basic maintenance nutrient to a profound architect of human potential. A really fascinating clinical trial from 2013 in the American Journal of Psychiatry recently tracked healthy pregnant women to see if high doses of phosphatidylcholine could prevent the future development of schizophrenia in their children.
And that instantly caught my attention. Because schizophrenia is a highly complex condition, it's generally understood to be triggered by a mix of genetic predispositions and environmental stressors in the womb or early life.
Right.
So, are these researchers suggesting a simple nutrient from an egg yolk can actually override genetic environmental triggers in the womb?
What's fascinating here is that the choline doesn't erase or rewrite the genetic code.
Okay.
Instead, it provides the developing fetal brain with such an overwhelming supply of structural materials. Remember, it builds cell membranes and regulates that epigenetic software that the brain becomes hyper-resilient.
Wow.
The researchers gave these women a supplement equivalent to about 3 large eggs a day. And after the babies were born, they tested them for specific physiological markers known to predict schizophrenia, like how the infant's brain processes repetitive clicking sounds.
And the infants whose mothers took the high-dose choline had significantly fewer of those warning markers.
Exactly.
It's like pouring a heavily reinforced, double-thick concrete foundation for a house, rather than just building a standard foundation and waiting to patch the drywall when it inevitably cracks 20 years later. You are physically building a structure that can withstand the environmental earthquake that would normally trigger that genetic disease.
That's a perfect analogy. And the protective architecture is permanent. Another 2013 study in nutritional neuroscience tested the same prenatal supplementation on rats.
Ew.
When the offspring reached adulthood, the researchers put them through complex object recognition tests. The adult rats whose mothers received prenatal choline supplementation had vastly superior memory scores compared to the control group.
That's incredible.
Yeah, the brain was basically permanently upgraded during the manufacturing process.
But let's say you're listening to this and you're far past the prenatal stage. You're an adult who just wants to protect the brain hardware you currently have.
Well, a massive 2011 study out of Boston, the Framingham study, looked specifically at that.
Right?
They tracked nearly 1,400 dementia-free adults ages 36 to 83. They assessed their daily choline intake and then put them through rigorous memory tests and structural brain MRIs.
And the results were pretty stark.
Very. The subjects in the top quarter of choline intake vastly outperformed those in the bottom quarter on the memory tests.
But the cognitive tests are kind of subjective, right? The MRI scans provided the actual physical proof.
Exactly. The radiologists were looking for something called white matter hyperintensity.
Yeah, for anyone who hasn't stared at a brain scan recently, these show up as bright white spots on an MRI. And they indicate areas where blood vessels in the brain are diseased or breaking down. They're a massive red flag for an impending stroke or future dementia.
And the subjects with the highest choline intakes had significantly fewer of those bright white spots. Their blood vessels were physically intact.
Because the choline was constantly supplying the raw materials to repair those cellular walls. It's not just about feeling a little forgetful or having brain fog. It's about preventing the physical degradation of the brain's plumbing system.
Right.
The people with low choline were literally rotting from the inside out, visibly breaking down on an MRI.
It's sobering. It really proves that choline is an active daily requirement for structural maintenance well into your 80s.
Definitely.
And that mechanism of cellular maintenance leads directly into how choline acts as a shield against severe chronic diseases, particularly cancer.
The cancer data is incredibly compelling. Multiple large-scale studies have looked at breast cancer rates in relation to diet.
Yeah.
There was one major 2008 Long Island study that tracked over 1,500 cases, and they found that women with the highest dietary choline intake reduced their risk of breast cancer by 24%.
That's a huge reduction.
It is. And then another massive investigation in China in 2013 confirmed what researchers call a dose-response inverse relationship.
Right. And a dose-response inverse relationship means the protective effect scales mathematically.
Okay.
The higher the intake of choline, the lower the risk of developing the cancer. It basically eliminates the possibility of a random correlation because The body is responding proportionally to the exact amount of the nutrient provided.
It's providing the cells with the epigenetic software to regulate themselves properly,
Mm.
stopping them from mutating into tumors.
Exactly.
We see a similar protective shield with pancreatic cancer, too. A 2016 Singapore health study tracking over 60,000 subjects for more than 16 years found that higher choline intakes led to statistically significant decreases in pancreatic cancer, especially in men.
But, we do have to look at how this nutrient interacts with systemic metabolic stress, because it does have limits.
Right.
This raises an important question. We talked earlier about the liver being a warehouse and choline building the delivery trucks to move fat out.
Yes, the fatty liver connection.
Well, a 2014 study of 56,000 Chinese adults found that high choline intake beautifully protected normal weight, middle-aged, and older women from non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
Okay.
But for individuals who are clinically overweight or obese, that protective effect vanished completely.
See, that anomaly stopped me in my tracks.
Yeah, it's confusing at first.
Right. Hold on. The study showed it protected normal weight women, but did absolutely nothing for overweight women. Why would a cellular building block just decide to stop working based on someone's BMI? Is the bodily machinery just too overwhelmed by other factors at that point?
That's exactly it. The choline hasn't stopped working. It's still trying to build those delivery trucks. But if a person is dealing with severe obesity, the sheer volume of lipid accumulation and systemic inflammation in that warehouse completely outpaces the available fleet of trucks.
Wow.
The bodily machinery is just too overwhelmed. It demonstrates that while choline is a vital metabolic tool, it cannot single-handedly rescue a system that is entirely overloaded by excess energy and inflammation.
So, going back to our metaphor, having adequate choline is like having a perfectly functioning bucket to bail water out of a rowboat.
I like this.
It works flawlessly to keep you afloat if you have a manageable leak. But if the entire side of the hull is missing due to massive metabolic dysfunction, bailing water with that little bucket isn't going to save the ship.
That is exactly the right way to visualize it. And we also see this limitation in cardiovascular data.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a 2015 study in Japan tracking nearly 30,000 people for 16 years found absolutely no association whatsoever between choline intake and cardiovascular disease mortality.
So it's heavily protective of the liver, it armors the brain, it cuts the risk of breast and pancreatic cancers, but it isn't a magical cure-all that prevents heart attacks.
No, it's not magic. It
Yeah.
is a specific structural component. It fortifies the walls and the communication lines, but it doesn't solve every single mechanical failure a human body can experience.
But when you step back and look at the whole picture, we have a nutrient that was functionally invisible to institutional nutrition until 1998. And now it stands as the ultimate biological multitasker. I mean, it builds the physical walls of our cells, it creates the spark that fires our muscles, it writes the software that protects our DNA, it builds fortified brains in the womb, and it actively maintains the blood vessels in our heads as we age.
It really is the unseen scaffolding of human vitality.
But here's where it gets really interesting, though, to wrap this up.
Yeah.
In that massive breast cancer study, we discussed the 2013 Chinese one that proved the dose-response protective effect.
Yeah.
There was a specific piece of data regarding the control group. These were the healthy women without cancer who were being compared to the cancer patients.
Oh, right. The data revealed that the average daily intake of choline for that supposedly healthy control group was only 173 milligrams.
173 milligrams. The baseline adult requirement is supposed to be around 425 milligrams.
Exactly.
That means the completely normal, healthy control group was operating on less than half the required biological material to maintain their cells.
And that forces us to confront a deeply unsettling reality about modern public health. If a baseline deficiency of that magnitude is so widespread that it's simply considered normal, and it goes completely unnoticed by the average person, it completely recontextualizes our modern health struggles.
It makes you wonder how many issues we are misdiagnosing,
Totally.
how much everyday fatigue, how many instances of chronic brain fog, minor memory lapses, mood instability, or even rising rates of specific cancers are we incorrectly writing off? We blame it on normal aging, or we just chalk it up to a vague sense of bad genetics.
Yeah.
But what if a massive portion of those modern ailments actually traces back to a silent, multi-generational deficiency of this single, recently recognized nutrient? What if our bodies are just slowly breaking down because we stopped giving them the raw materials to rebuild the walls?
Are your internal engines sputtering because you've starved them of the basic spark plug they need to fire? It is definitely something you have to evaluate for your own daily routine.
It certainly makes you look at a simple egg yolk in a completely different light.
Hmm.
Well, thank you so much for coming along on this deep dive with us today.
It was a pleasure.
The next time you sit down for breakfast, we hope you look just a little closer at your plate and remember the invisible biological spark that keeps you moving.